Hey everyone, thanks for coming in today. Actually, today I wanted to jump into one of my personal favorite franchises in history, which is the history of Borderlands. But in the background, you'll see a little bit of gameplay from the newly released Borderlands 4. Came out Friday. That said, I wanted to kind of discuss not just this game, but kind of the history of Borderlands in general, whether it's the spin-off titles, community response, the evolution of actual gameplay itself, and what it all means kind of heading into to this game and how it all came to head. That said, before Borderlands was really created, Gearbox Software was actually known for narrative shooters like Brothers in Arms. Whenever Gearbox actually first pitched Borderlands, expectations were kind of more of a modest take on a first-person shooter. That said, Borderlands was initially was going to be a blend of RPG loot mechanics, kind of like a Diablo style, mixed with first-person shooter mechanics. They wanted to create something completely new and rewarding that was basically exploration and was able to be replayed pretty repetitively. That said, the release date for the original Borderlands was back in 2009 on PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation. As you can see, the distinct art style of the game was very comic booky and self-shaded style, which really helped it stand out pretty drastically amongst others in the market. The gun randomization system also was pretty ambitious. It took thousands of parts from multiple different guns and procedurally generated combinations, which made the game feel and the guns feel very unique to play with. Additionally, one of the main things that kind of got everybody excited was the co-op play, which was baked into the game and the core gameplay itself, which gave you and a bunch of friends the ability to explore Pandora, which was a massive draw for a lot of players. Critics themselves really liked the experience of Borderlands because it was something completely new, unlike anything we've done, seen in previous years or just in history. It was quite novel, but it did have it's pretty rough around the edges, I would say. Some of the pacing was really messed up and had some pacing issues. Some of the actual designs themselves are quite repetitive. Still, though, the infrastructure was there, and the seeds of what Borderlands could be was basically planted. That said, 3 years later came Borderlands 2, and it took everything up a notch. The loot-based mechanics got even deeper. Better skill trees were invented and developed upon. They also had more of a focus on elemental type weapons, more meaningful customization to the characters, as well as traversal vehicles, which was all free in the game. That said, map design improved drastically. Enemies also were more varied, and then the worlds themselves felt quite a bit more alive. But arguably one of the most biggest leaps in the story itself was the actual delivery of Handsome Jack, the antagonist, which is probably one of the most beloved and arguably one of the best villains in modern video games. I would say in history, in my own opinion. That said, he made the story have some stakes. He also gave it a lot of humor, and he also made players pretty emotionally invested in the game itself. Not only that, Borderlands 2 took it to a whole nother level with a lot of their DLCs, which were basically mini storylines and an actual game itself. DLCs such as Assault on Dragon Keep, which was my personal favorite, Mr. Torgue's Campaign of Carnage, and Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt, were not just, like I said, basic DLCs. The developers pretty much experimented with tone, content, and different systems, which pretty much turned out pretty great for most players. That said, sales for Borderlands 2 remains kind of the gold standard in the series. Over the course of its lifespan, it sold approximately 30 million copies, more than any other in the franchise, with reports as early as spring in 2025. That said, while not, strictly in the main line, we see the release of the Borderlands, the pre-sequel edition, which was in 2014. The release of this was kind of divisive. A lot of people either loved or hated it. It was kind of the story that bridged Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, and it tells how the antagonist of Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack, rose to power. It introduced an entirely new place that took us off of the main planet that was from the first and second game of Pandora, which took you to the Pandora's moon, Elpis. Not only was this a new environment and a new planet in quotations, it also introduced new mechanics like low gravity, new weapon types, laser guns, as well as a new elemental type, the ice or cold mechanics and freezing. Additionally, they had increased environmental hazards, which was like anything in the previous games. That said, some of the, like I said, players found it a little less polished, and the tone was a little bit uneven, so some did not really resonate too much with it. However, it did deepen the lore of the Borderlands universe, which opened up a lot more doors in the future itself. Additionally, like I said, this was not technically made by Gearbox's main studio, but Gearbox Australia, which should be noted. That said, fast forward into 2019, we see and start hearing rumors of Borderlands 3. After years and years of teasers and speculations, and of course spin-off titles, Gearbox finally deliver the actual sequel that everybody was looking for in the mainline series. The cool thing about Borderlands 3 is it took everything up from Borderlands 1 and 2 and just raised it to an entirely new level. Like I said, there was more planets beyond Pandora. You got to visit places such as Eden 6, Promethea, Nebula, etc., with a variety of environmental increases. Additionally, like every Borderlands game, there is always 4 Vault Hunters to start out. The 4 this time was Amara, Mose, Flak, and Zane, each with very distinct mechanics, giving players more options in how they want to approach combat and builds. It also had an enormous increase in number of weapon and gear types. Legendary weapons were more dramatic and had additional bonuses on top of them called anointments. The mod systems themselves grow even deeper. And then lastly, the support model was the biggest shift in Borderlands 3 from 1 and 2. Previously in Borderlands 2, like I said, there was DLCs, just like in Borderlands 1, which were paid DLCs, and once it was paid, it was a one-and-done kind of situation. However, Borderlands 3 introduced more modernized monetization systems, such as like their version of a season pass, as well as live service updates with more expansions over the time. That said, though, even though the gameplay was pretty incredible, it did have some challenges and some issues itself. A lot of criticism on the storytelling. It felt a lot lighter in parts, and the villains of the game, Tyrene and Troy Calypso, didn't really universally resonate as sharply as Handsome Jack himself did. Some fans felt the tone was kind of drifting, but nevertheless, it was still, commercial performance was really strong. Borderlands 3 sold over 22 million copies, like I said, of spring of 2025. However, something really insane to think about, though, is even though this is the first of its kind, the first looter shooter, is what they would call it genre-wise, the Borderlands franchise has sold over 93 million copies total. We'll say Borderlands 2 is still the best selling in the entry with 30 million, and then 3 was 22 million. Critically, though, Borderlands 2 remains the high point for many fans, including myself, and as you can look up, a lot of the reviewers agree as well. While Borderlands 3 does get praises for improvements, it tends to be quite a bit less on the scale of an overall title. That said, 2025 comes around and we finally get the release of the next installment, Borderlands 4. It was released, like I said, Friday, September 12th, 2025, ahead of its original release schedule, which I believe was the 23rd of September. The cool thing is again, we're kind of taken off of Pandora and moved beyond it to a new planet called Kairos. The cool thing about this one, this is the first first game in the franchise that's more open-based world versus segmented loading zones. A lot of the world, like I said, is interconnected. It was just a massive open world map with dynamic weather, more verticality, with double jump, glides, grappling hook, movement tech. That just kind of increases the exploration in the game itself. That said, there is some critical issues with the game. The reception has been pretty positive overall, but PC users reported significant performance issues, crashes, low frame rates, and stuttering. That said, though, the launch itself has been pretty staggering, with over 300,000 concurrent players on Steam at peak, making Borderlands 4, I believe, the biggest Steam launch in Borderlands history. So technically, Borderlands 4 has positioned itself as a return to form for Borderlands and fans alike. Even though open world and refined systems is kind of, made the game itself a lot more fluid to play, it does have a lot of technical issues, which Gearbox has confirmed they're working on to this point. That said, the technical issues does challenge show upscaling. There seems to be some, like I said, frame rate issues and whatnot. That said, beyond that, the tone and humor seems to come back and is quite enjoyable, and everybody's laughing and enjoying it from what I can tell thus far. It is the dark humor, sharper humor is back, leaning more towards Borderlands 2. The build and build complexity seems to be great in this game. With such, each title, it seems to get better and better over time. And more fleshed out. The storytelling so far, what I can tell, it has been really great. The villain seems to be really, really strong in the game itself, compared to 3 and the pre-sequel. And then also too, there is technically going to be post-launch content and services like the previous games, as well as new Vault Hunters introduced to the game. Looking forward, though, Borderlands has basically carved out one of the most successful looter shooter franchises in gaming, with over 93 million copies sold, which is pretty incredible. It's set the gold standard for loot generation, co-op, mix, and how to mix humor with shooting, guns, and like I said, in the background you can see me playing more of a melee focused build. The build, or the community itself, is devoted to the game. Many players have grown up with these series like myself and seen it kind of evolve over nearly 2 decades. That said, there is some challenges. It reaches to think about balance itself is kind of hard to do when you're trying to change too much. How far is too different? But in conclusion, I kind of just want to say Borderlands is more than just a looter shooter. It's a case study of how to build a franchise that keeps its core about loot and community and absurdity while evolving. From the lean, hungry mists of Pandora in 2009 to this point, we're on a completely new world, and just keep pushing forward. So whether you're a veteran Vault Hunter with dozens of runs across multiple games, or you're just stepped in for your first ride, there's something for everybody. Whenever playing Borderlands, friends can play and play co-op. It is challenging, but that's the beauty, and I think that everybody will enjoy the game itself. But like I said, as we stand now in 2025, Borderlands 4 being out, and I think the future's pretty bright and wide open. I just think the danger is not that the series stops innovating, but that it forgets its roots and what made it magical in the first place, and we start going down a path to where we're starting to monetize the game a bit too much. But yeah. Thanks for listening, and hope you guys enjoy the gameplay.